Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon. So should you. Enjoy your treat!
Welcome to another episode of Timeline Differences. This time you guys voted that you want to see Sophitia / Cassandra because they both obviously intertwine so much that we're probably going to cover them in one video like we're doing right now. So again, like always, I want to thank Layla for actually doing a lot of the research for this video and providing most of the information, and you guys should go check out her YouTube channel whenever you get a chance. But without further delay, we're just going to jump right into the video so you guys can get all this awesome information and hopefully tell me in the comment section if there's something new that you didn't hear before. Unlike most characters in Soul Calibur's universe, Sophitia and Cassandra's stories are so intertwined that you can't possibly talk about one without discussing the other. Their stories each influence how the other stories play out, and that is why today we are going to be talking about both of them in this timeline comparisons discussion. In the original timeline, the story begins with Sophitia all the way back in the first game of Soul Edge. She started out as a daughter of an Athenian baker. The god Hephaestus had chosen her alongside others who were faithful to the gods to find and destroy the cursed sword Soul Edge, and he gave her a blessed sword and shield in order to do so. She set out to face the current wielder of Soul Edge, Cervantes de Leon. Because Soul Edge conforms to the form that the user is most comfortable with, for Cervantes it took the shape of two swords. Sophitia was able to destroy one of them, but not without one of the shards embedding itself close to her heart. Taki was there to save her and take her home, luckily, but the second half of Cervantes' weapon was left behind. During the events of Soul Calibur 1, she had healed from her injuries and resumed living as a simple baker's daughter. One day though, while out with her sister Cassandra, she felt a pain near her chest, and she received a vision of a knight in azure armor who wielded the evil sword. When she woke up, she found that a man named Rothion had helped Cassandra bring her home. The two fell in love quickly and decided to marry. When Sophitia and Rothion went to a shrine to have their marriage blessed, Hephaestus tasked her once again to go out and find and destroy the second half of the evil edge. Rothion, who was a blacksmith, was tasked with making her a sword and shield to carry out her new quest. During her journey, she was able to bless those she came across who were malfested. Eventually, when she was sure someone else had destroyed the blade, she went home and got married. A year after they got married, Pyrrha was born, and then a year after that is when Patroclus was born. By the year 1590, which is when Soul Calibur 2 takes place, Pyrrha is 3 years old and Patroclus is 2. Before the events of Soul Calibur 2, someone had given Rothion a strange fragment of metal, which caused Pyrrha and Patroclus to start behaving aggressively. They both fought over who got to have the metal, which prompted their aunt Cassandra to take it from them and run out of the house. This is where Cassandra's story begins. She ran out of the house and straight to Hephaestus' shrine to yell at the god for putting her sister through all this strife. She then realized that the shard that she was holding was reacting to the sword and shield that Sophitia had used the last time she was sent out. Cassandra decided to take matters into her own hands and take them as she could destroy Soul Edge once and for all so that Sophitia could find her well-earned happiness. Sophitia decided to go after her sister to protect her, but with sword and shield now gone, Rothion needed to construct a new one for her in order to pursue this new quest. The new timeline follows many of the same story beats. However, this time they take their time telling the story and add more detail. One of the first differences that we can note, Sophitia is on her second quest, curing the malfested. We actually see her run into Siegfried. At this point in the story, Soul Edge had already been shattered by Killik. She finds him and tries to bless him. She is unable to fully remove the evil within him, but he thanks her for making him feel so at ease and then asks her to leave Soul Edge with him. As she watches him leave, she prays to Hephaestus to watch over Siegfried before she herself heads home. Meanwhile, back in Athens, Cassandra is unsure what this new quest Sophitia had taken entailed and decided to investigate. Her theory was that as Sophitia had gone after Soul Edge again, the sword and shield that Hephaestus had given Sophitia during the first quest would be gone. Cassandra found that the sword and the shield were still in place, but was met with a jarring surprise. An astral chaos portal opened up, and a disheveled swordswoman appeared before her. That swordswoman, unbeknownst to Cassandra, was her old timeline counterpart who had gone insane after getting swallowed up by the astral chaos after the events of Soul Calibur 4. Unlike in the old timeline, Hephaestus reached out to Cassandra directly to bless her with the ability to fight, and she used that ability to fight off this swordswoman. After the old timeline Cassandra had calmed down, she explained to the new timeline Cassandra everything that she knew about Sophitia, with the hopes that the new timeline Cassandra could save her before tragedy befell her. She gave her the following prophecy. Sophitia's child will be born with a great darkness inside, and it will be abducted and cursed by the sword's malfested kin to become Soul Edge's vessel. The child will be unable to live without the sword's evil, causing Sophitia to remove the fragment of the cursed sword inside her and use it to save her child. It is important to note that the new timeline Cassandra decided when hearing this prophecy to keep the Soul Edge fragment inside of Sophitia a secret, not even telling Sophitia herself about it. The new timeline Cassandra never found out that the woman that she was speaking to was herself from another timeline. When the ordeal was over, Cassandra was unsure what just happened actually happened or not, admits to herself that she isn't sure if she believes everything that she heard. She asks Rothion to repair the sword and shield that she used at the shrine, the ones that Sophitia had used against Cervantes, and is able to make him admit that Sophitia had gone out after Soul Edge again without telling anyone. Cassandra and Rothion for a while don't get along, as Cassandra is upset that Rothion would allow Sophitia to pursue such a dangerous quest on her own. After talking to her brother, she decided that she would go out and try and complete Sophitia's quest for her so that she could come home and be safe. Cassandra was able to bless the Malfested on her quest just like Sophitia could, and her journey eventually led her to a trap set by Fugal Sestimus, where she fought lizardmen, an Astaroth-esque golem, and a cultist. It is there that she realized that she could call upon the gods in a much more powerful manner than at first she thought. But she was still unsure about where Sophitia was or how best to help her, so she went home. While speaking to her brother, she realized that she had grown up feeling like she was Sophitia's shadow and wanted to become Sophitia's equal. Finally, at the same shrine that she was at earlier, she found Sophitia and tried to prove herself to her. The two came to an understanding that they both want to fight for the safety and well-being of those that they love, and Cassandra came to respect Sophitia's decision for her taking on these quests against Soul Edge. Cassandra and Rothion make up and decide to be allies in protecting Sophitia. Rothion and Sophitia decide to have their wedding, and then ask Cassandra to name their firstborn child. Cassandra thinks to herself, maybe a name from the stories Sis used to tell me when we were little. A name that says no matter how hard things get, they'll be tough enough to see it through. If it's a boy, maybe Deucalion. If it's a girl, and then the scene fades to black. It is something important to note when it comes to discussing Sophitia and Cassandra is how much Greek mythology influences their story. We might be tempted to think that now Cassandra has been told the future, that she will know what's going to happen for her to protect Sophitia. However, in Greek mythology, there was a character named Cassandra who is blessed with the ability to see the future, but cursed in such a way that no one will believe her prophecies. With this inspiration in mind, I would not be surprised if the new timeline Cassandra takes what her old timeline counterpart said with a grain of salt. That isn't to say that this was all for nothing, but I also don't personally anticipate that every single problem will be cleanly avoided either. As for the names that Cassandra contemplates for Sophitia's child, Deucalion is the name of a character in Greek mythology who was, alongside his wife, the only survivor of a great flood. Deucalion's wife was named Pyrrha. Being that both names would have appeared in the stories Cassandra is referring to, and that Pyrrha had survived a great flood, that name would still fit and ticket with what Cassandra would want her potential niece to be named. Alongside the fact that the scene faded before actually heard the name, this is why I am of the opinion that Sophitia's first child should be a girl, and that child will be Pyrrha, who was first born in the old timeline. In the old timeline, Sophitia's shard in her chest was really only ever brought up when Pyrrha's safety was in question. However, in this new timeline, there's much more emphasis on the shard and Sophitia's dependency on it in order to live. Not to mention that the shard is now Cassandra's secret. Given that we have the swords and shepherds who are collecting swords, I could see that Sophitia would directly be hunted down and maybe even taken prisoner. You might wonder why they wouldn't just kill her instead so that they can take it out, but you remember, she shared a moment with Siegfried in this new timeline. Even if he is Nightmare once again, I can see that he asks that she be spared because he remembers the kindness that she showed him. Lastly, one of the biggest and most glaring differences between the two timelines is Cassandra's attitudes towards the gods. In the old timeline, we really don't know what her relationship was like with them before Soul Calibur 2, only that Soul Calibur 2 and onward, she regarded them with great disdain. In this timeline, she gets to be a holy warrior chosen by the gods, the same as her sister. In the old timeline, she screams and shouts at the statues when she is angry with them, but in this timeline, she was shown to be fearful of their wrath simply by being compared to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, which shows that she seems to have a greater regard for them in this timeline, at least right now. Of course, where their story ends in Soul Calibur 6 is years before Soul Calibur 2 would have taken place, so there's still time for things to change. However, I'm truly unsure of what sort of impact this will have going forward. And thank you, Layla, for that. Now, this is going to be a somewhat weird situation because I actually somewhat disagree with Layla when it comes to this actual position. I feel like the entire reason why they wanted the reboot in the first place was things got way too messy in Soul Calibur 5. They did way too many things to upset fans, so traveling down that path at all would probably be a no-go for sure, in my opinion. So the fact that they faded to black could be interpreted that like they're leaving it hanging on the edge that it is Pyrrha, and now we're going to go through this story again possibly. But in my opinion, I think the reason they left it on black is because they wanted to actually take time to probably develop the characters, and they're going to be as different from the past timeline counterparts as they were before. I don't even really foresee them going down some kind of similar dark path that they did before. Perhaps, if anything, it could be a chance for Sophitia's character to possibly retire and pass on her skills to the future, but I think we have Cassandra for that anyway, so I don't really feel the need to necessarily bring her child into this. It might just be something in the background, because it doesn't seem like in this new timeline we're doing things like we did in the old timeline, where things just like jumped ahead decades at some points. We're going very narrowly through a very curated story, so I feel like by the time those years would even happen in this point in the timeline, the children would still be far too young for anything to even happen. I mean, that's push comes to shove, because we see things like Gro, who's only 12 in Soul Calibur 6, and though he may be let's say 16 in the next story, he's not going to be 32. They're going to be pretty much jumping off from the point of where the swords and shepherds are either looking for the swords, the shards of the sword, or they're in the midst of doing so. So I don't know if I completely agree that there's going to be any rehashing from the kids, and personally I hope that they don't, but whatever happens, I'm sure the writers have everything in mind that they're going to do already, so whatever place they take this to, hopefully we at least just get a good story out of it. But that's going to be the video for today, guys. I want to thank you for sticking with me through the timeline differences video. If you did get to the end of the video, I do want you to put Evil Cassandra clone in the comment section, just so I know that you actually got to the end of the video. There is going to be a poll at the end of this video to narrow down the last 2 people that are going to take over for the next timeline video in 2 weeks, so be sure to vote on that poll at the end of this video. And as I always say, guys, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.